Hello there. Nobody's allowances need burning. Don't worry. You can all keep your pocket money. All right? There we go. How are we all feeling? Everyone okay? I think Barbarian was betting 20 something dollars. Yen, what were you betting, Barbarian? Euros, 20 on being late. Bublina has no money. Well, at least you stayed warm. Groschen. Nice. Good morning, USA. I have beef with re-vulcanized urethane. All right. Hello, Dead Lizzie. First time chat. Nice to have you here. Hi, ICP. Hey, nothing but lurking. Imogen. Bubonique. At your limit, Alison. Oh, no. What's up? Quick hello before rehearsal. How's the volume, by the way? Is the mic position okay for you all? Same closet as the last time. Yeah, got to change it up a little bit, Debbie. You know, perfect. Good stuff. You missed the pain mic. Don't worry, it'll be back on Thursday when I do my cooking stream. Did you hear that right? Yes. Volume's a lot better today. Interesting. I haven't changed anything. I just plugged it back in. Brizzle. All right there, Brizzle. You did hear cooking, yes. Thursday red wine reduction. No, we're going to start with something a bit more simple to start with because I need to get a hang of it. I love soup. I love soup a lot. Hey, Yancord. And so I've decided we're going to do a super week, and I'm going to go around the world, and I'm going to do the sort of the national soup of each country. So if there's any of you Czechs listening tonight, if we maybe get a vote on what we think, because I'm going to start with Czech Republic. I thought Česnečka or Bramboračka. Yes, exactly. So we're going to start with the Czech Republic, and then I'm going to go circle around Europe, and then we're going to expand from there. And obviously this could carry on for quite a while, but over the next 52 weeks, we are going to basically go through the world and do soups, because I love soup. Pichelsteiner Topf. Yeah, it can go anywhere really. There are so many soups, and that's the amazing thing about it, of course. With cheese or without cheese, that is absolutely up to you. But I do like it with cheese, I have to say, especially the stinky stuff. Olomoucký. What happened with your sweater? Happy to share it. Yes. Dip fry. Isn't that just what's it called? Jesus, I've forgotten now. What's with the fries and the gravy and the curd cheese? Pho absolutely counts, and pho will be on the list for Vietnam. There will be a sauerkraut soup involved. Probably not until poutine. Yes. Distinct from putain, of course. Parsnip. Oh my God, I can't get parsnips here though. No, we're not going to do soupy poutine. soup. Let's. I think we can. My definition of soup. I don't know if this would be the dictionary definition of soup, but my definition of soup would be a standalone dish that is base of liquid, whether it is pureed or has pieces in it, but that the base is a broth or some kind of liquid. With that, of course, can come many things. Toast. What is soup? Baby, don't feed me no more. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Some people don't like soup, though. There was that meme that came up. Some fella from the US going, proper men don't eat soup in public or something. It's like, what are you talking about, you ingrate? Will you cook Mama's black magic? Only if she asks nicely. Broth, soup, I mean, they're in the same place, yeah. I would argue broth is a little bit more hearty, but they overlap. And of course, it really depends on where you are. Hey, Alvela, first time chat. Hey. Oh my God, Lils. I have to say, sometimes in my past, I have. Hey, Holly Pop, we got Raiders. Hey James, nice to thank you for using the last 2% of your battery. Hopefully you don't need it for anything else more serious. Jade, first time chat from Raider. Hello. Where was I at? Oh yeah, broth. Was that what I was talking about? Oh, I can't remember. Someone put me back on dusk and bean soup. Hi Jade. Hello all you Raiders. We're talking about soup at the minute. Oh, that's right, vegetable broth. Sometimes it has brought me to tears just cooking up vegetables. Oh my God, it's just so good. Thank you, Dandaloria, for bringing us Raiders. Hey y'all. How you doing, girl? We're talking soup at the minute. Well, here's the thing. Goulash, James, this is a little bit controversial because the Hungarians, of course, don't call what goulash because goulash is a soup. One might argue it's more stewy. What's this always with the cigarettes? Maybe one day. But, of course, Perkult would be more the stew base. Let's look that up. We'll get into that on Thursday, shall we? Yeah. Oh, consommé. Of course, Rayumi would know. She's a professional chef. So, I'm doing good. Love soup. Talk some more. What's your favorite? Danda. What, Dandalore? Can I call you Danda? Is that okay? Do I need to say the full name? How does this work? Such a beautifully nice onion soup with white. Oh, yes, I know. Actually, I've got like 3 kilos of onions because I'm going to make red onion marmalade. Maybe we could do that as well. But I can't give you my recipe. No, it's secret. Okay, we're not going to do that. Oh my God, you see, this is set chat on fire here. Don't know any other way. What's going on here? Kissing you while I show you how to make rope out of tree bark when we live. Burnt out in the kitchen. Oh, I hear you. Sometimes maybe school is not the thing to help us keep our passions alive. Secret recipe, yes. I found a recipe in a book that was gifted for my birthday a long time ago by my brother, about pickles and stuff like that. Danda, okay, cool. And I basically butchered a recipe in there, but so I can't really give it away. Michael, look away. Why? If you don't give your recipe to Ziglings, okay. I like pea soup. Oh my God, pea soup, yes. With or without ham? Detv, get back to me. I'm scrolling back up. I need to know. With or without ham? What kind of pea soup are we talking? We talking green pea soup? Wonton. I just had wonton soup for dinner. Soup is love. Soup is life. There's nothing quite like it. Sitting down. Oh my God, feeding people, sat around a table. Um, let's see. I mean, my idea is to kind of travel from country to country, but maybe others will sneak in, and then we'll do other cooking programs where we'll get into more solid stuff. And my it seems like everyone here cooks actually, but my idea is to counter this speedy world we live in. If I haven't talked about my cooking stream concept, which is to slow it down because I mean, I like cooking. And if you know how to cook, you watch those 2 minute Instagram shorts, right? And someone just like cha 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 cha, and it's just edited so quickly. Um, but what if you don't know how to cook? So we'll go back to basics as well. Yes, cold soup. Oh, okay. Well, that's it. Maybe you don't cook, and maybe you do. So it'll be very. There'll be some basics. I think with the soups, we'll just kind of go through, and then I'll have some other streams where I really kind of get into what tools you might want if you haven't bought tools. Um, yeah, cleanup's part of it though. N7. Um, I used to hate it as well, and then I worked a ski season, and I just gave up on hating on it. It's just part of it. And actually, once you kind of get in that mindset, like clean the surface, right? Back to square one. Yes, Bob Ross approach to cooking. Exactly. Anybody can do it, and we'll that's it. And measure the ingredients with your heart. Absolutely. Recipes are a guide most of the time. I would argue for some things though, solyanka, can we make a note of that? Solyanka. Hang on, why is it unhealthy? Okay. Yeah, but why not? Yeah, well, that's the thing. So I won't be cleaning as I go necessarily, but I'll actually be prepping ahead of time. Um, hey, Smokey, first time chat as well. Sweet, nice to see you. Um, there's a movie with a rat about that. Really? I don't know it. Um, why would you be shot, Alison? I missed that. No, pasta and soup is fine. It depends on the soup. Oh my god, gumbo and chicken. Oh, what are you talking about now? Okay, thanks, Danda. Thanks for bringing over your raid. I appreciate that. Um, hey, Royal Blue. Um, there's so many good things out there. And for me, cooking is um, no, but you can put pasta in a soup. There's certain there's chicken broths in Central Europe. There's these tiny little soup noodles specifically for that. Absolutely. My grandmother also, where she actually cut pancakes, vledelsuppe, flail soup, or vledel is what you thresh with corn, and you cut pancakes into strips and you chuck that into a broth. It's great. Um, if a Michael's done was doing motion capture, but does anyone? Hang on, what? Hang on, Yanko. What do you mean? Was I doing motion capture for what Radzig? Yes, that's me. Depends on the pasta. Lapsha is the whole point in some soups. Oh, talking about laksha. Does anybody know what laksha is? It's a Malaysian soup. Wild. Oh. No, I did the facial mocap as well. They just didn't use my face. For the first one, they face scanned everyone, and then they put that on top, and then they were doing some tracking with us as well. And then for the second one, they had us doing the thing, but they can put any face on you. That's the whole point. Um, with salmon, fat salmon soup. Yeah, but it's got to be right salmon, hasn't it? It's got to be. I mean, I would go wild caught salmon. I don't do farmed salmon. Um, You should not turn in hungry on Thursday. This is true. Okay. Tiny thin noodles. There we go. Liver dumplings, homemade noodle. Exactly. That's a classic. There we go with a viva with a broth. Yeah. Well. What can I say, Rumi? Hey, Crab Alley. First time chat. Nice. And here you are on Twitch. Hello, everyone. Hey. There is no argument, I think, ICP, Yowie. I don't think there's really an argument. Anyway. That's nice, Alison. I'm glad to hear that. Swedish pea soup and pancakes. Okay. All right. So we're going to start with Czech soup. We got a couple of votes for Česnečka. We'll check in on that again. Right now, though, I think we should dive in. You don't have to like fish. That's fine. We can't all like everything, and that's what makes the world beautiful. What page did we get to last time? Did we remember that? Did anyone make a note of that? Because I forgot. Was it 191? Shrimp. You're going to be a grieving widow. Okay. Page 67. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ooh. I think it was 191. That's right. We just finished with yes, Jade, this is how it goes with my naughty children. Well, we'll see, Alison. So Caleb was talking to May, and she was a little perturbed because I think she actually likes the boss, even though she doesn't realise he's an absolute grade A-hole. And we were just going back to the Piribingles. All right. Here we go. In the meantime, there'd been a pretty sharp commotion at John Peerybingle's, for little Mrs. Peerybingle naturally couldn't think of going anywhere without the baby, and to get the baby underway took time. Not that there was much of the baby, speaking of it as a thing of weight and measure, but there was a vast deal to do about it, and it all had to be done by easy stages. For instance, when the baby was got, by hook and by crook, to a certain point of dressing, and you might have rationally supposed that another touch or two would finish him off and turn him out a tip-top baby challenging the world, he was unexpectedly extinguished in a flannel cap and hustled off to bed, where he simmered, so to speak, between two blankets for the best part of an hour. From this state of inaction he was then recalled, shining very much and roaring violently, to partake of, well, I would rather say, if you'll permit me to speak generally, of a slight repast, after which he went to sleep again. Mrs. Peerybingle took advantage of this interval to make herself as smart in a small way as ever you saw anybody in all your life, and during the same short truce, Miss Slowboy insinuated herself into a Spencer of a fashion too surprising and ingenious that it had no connection with herself or anything else in the universe, but was a shrunken dog's-eared intended fact, pursuing its lonely course without the least regard to anybody. By this time, the baby, being all alive again, was invested by the united efforts of Mrs. Peerybingle and Miss Slowboy with a cream-coloured mantle for its body and a sort of nankeen raised pie for its head. And so in course of time, they all three got down to the door, where the old horse had already taken more than the full value of his day's toll out of the Turnpike Trust by tearing up the road with his impatient autographs, and whence Boxer might be dimly seen in the remote perspective, standing, looking back, and tempting him to come on without orders. Naughty dog. As to a chair or anything of that kind for helping Mrs. Peerybingle into the cart, you know very little of John, if you think that was necessary. Before you could have seen him lift her from the ground, there she was in her place, fresh and rosy, saying, "John, how can you think of Tilly?" If I might be allowed to mention a young lady's legs on my terms, I would observe of Miss Slowboy's that there was a fatality about them which rendered them singularly liable to be grazed, and that she never effected the smallest ascent or descent without recording the circumstances upon them with a notch, as Robinson Crusoe marked the days upon his wooden calendar. But as this might be considered ungenteel, I'll think of it. "John, you've got the basket with the veal and ham pie and things and the bottles of beer," said Dot. "If you haven't, you must turn around again this very minute." "You're a very nice little article," returned the carrier, "to be talking about turning round after keeping me a full quarter of an hour behind my time." "I'm sorry for it, John," said Dot in a great bustle, "but I really could not think of going to Bertha's. It would not do, John, on any account without the veal and ham pie and things and the bottles of beer. Way!" This monosyllable was addressed to the horse, who didn't mind it at all. "Oh, do way, John," said Mrs. Peerybingle, "please." "It'll be time enough to do that," returned John, "when I begin to leave things behind me. The basket's here, safe enough." "What a hard-hearted monster you must be, John, not to have said so at once and saved me such a turn. I declared I would go to Bertha without the veal and ham pie and things and the bottles of beer for any money. Regularly once a fortnight ever since we've been married, John, have we made our little picnic there. If anything was to go wrong with it, I would almost think we were never to be lucky again." "It was a kind of thought in the first instance," said the carrier, "and I honour you for it, little woman." "My dear John," replied Dot, turning very red, "don't talk about honouring me, good gracious." "By the by," observed the carrier, "that old gentleman," again so visibly and instantly embarrassed. "He's an odd fish," said the carrier, looking straight along the road before him. "I can't make him out. I don't believe there's any harm in him." "None at all. I'm sure there's none at all." "Yes," said the carrier, with his eyes attracted to her face by the great earnestness of her manner. "I'm glad you feel so certain of it, because it's a confirmation to me. It's curious that he should have taken it into his head to ask leave to go on lodging with us, isn't it? Things come about so strangely." "So very strangely," she rejoined in a low voice scarcely audible. "However, he's a good-natured old gentleman," said John, "and pays as a gentleman, and I think his word is to be relied upon like a gentleman's. I had quite a long talk with him this morning. He can hear me better already, he says, as he gets more used to my voice. He told me a great deal about himself, and I told him a great deal about myself, and a rare lot of questions he asked me. I gave him information about my having 2 beats, in my business, one day to the right from our house and back again, another day to the left from our house and back again, for he's a stranger and don't know the names of places about here, and he seemed quite pleased. 'Why then, I shall be returning home tonight your way,' he says, 'when I thought you'd be coming in on an exactly opposite direction. That's capital. I may trouble you for another lift, perhaps, but I'll engage you not to fall so sound asleep again.' He was sound asleep, surely, Dot. Dot, what are you thinking of?" "Thinking of, John? I was listening to you." "Oh, that's all right," said the honest carrier. "I was afraid from the look on your face that I'd gone rambling on so long as to set you thinking about something else. I was very near it, I'll be bound." Dot making no reply, they jogged on for some little time in silence. But it was not easy to remain silent very long in John Peerybingle's cart, for everybody on the road had something to say, though it might only be, "How are you?" And indeed it was very often nothing else still, to give that back again in the right spirit of cordiality required, not merely a nod and a smile, but as wholesome an action of the lungs withal as a long-winded parliamentary speech. Sometimes passengers on foot or horseback plodded on a little way beside the cart for the express purpose of having a chat, and then there was a great deal to be said on both sides. Then Boxer gave occasion to more good-natured recognitions of, and by, the carrier than half a dozen Christians could have done. Everybody knew him all along the road, especially the fowls and pigs, who, when they saw him approaching, with his body all on one side and his ears pricked up inquisitively, and that knob of a tail making the most of itself in the air, immediately withdrew into remote back settlements without waiting for the honour of a nearer acquaintance. He had business everywhere, going down all the turnings, looking into all the wells, bolting in and out of all cottages, dashing into the midst of all the dames' schools, fluttering all the pigeons, magnifying the tails of all the cats, and trotting into public houses like a regular customer. Wherever he went, somebody or other might have been heard to cry, "Hello, here's Boxer," and out came the somebody forthwith, accompanied by at least 2 or 3 other somebodies, to give John Peerybingle and his pretty wife good day. The packages and parcels for the errand cart were numerous, and there were many stoppages to take them in and give them out, which were not by any means the worst parts of the journey. Some people were so full of expectations about their parcels, and other people were so full of wonder about their parcels, and other people were so full of inexhaustible directions about their parcels, and John had such lively interest in all the parcels that it was as good as a play. Likewise, there were articles to carry which required to be considered and discussed, and in reference to the adjustment and disposition of which councils had to be holden by the carrier and the senders, at which Boxer usually assisted in short fits of the closest attention, and long fits of tearing round and round the assembled sages and barking himself hoarse. Of all these little incidents, Dot was the amused and open-eyed spectatress from the chair in their cart, and as she sat there, looking on, a charming little portrait framed to admiration by the tilt, there was no lack of nudgings and glancings and whisperings and envyings among the younger men. And this delighted John the carrier beyond measure, for he was proud to have his little wife admired, knowing that she didn't mind it, that, if anything, she rather liked it, perhaps. The trip was a little foggy, to be sure, in the January weather, and was raw and cold, but who cared for such trifles? Not Dot, decidedly, not Tilly Slowboy, for she deemed sitting in a cart on any terms to be the highest point of human joys, the crowning circumstances of earthly hopes. Not the baby, I'll be sworn, for it's not in baby nature to be warmer or more sound asleep, though its capacity is great in both respects, than that blessed young Peerybingle was all the way. You couldn't see very far in the fog, of course, but you could see a great deal. It's astonishing how much you may see in a thicker fog than that, if you will only take the trouble to look for it. Why, even to sit watching for the fairy rings in the fields, and for the patches of hoarfrost still lingering in the shade near hedges and by trees, was a pleasant occupation. To make no mention of the unexpected shapes in which the trees themselves came starting out of the mist and glided into being again. The hedges were tangled and bare, and waved a multitude of blighted garlands in the wind, but there was no discouragement in this. It was agreeable to contemplate, for it made the fireside warmer in possession, and the summer greener in expectancy. The river looked chilly, but it was in motion, and moving at a good pace, which was a great point. The canal was rather slow and torpid, that must be admitted. Never mind. It would freeze the sooner when the frost set fairly in, and then there would be skating and sliding, and the heavy old barges frozen up somewhere near a wharf would smoke their rusty iron chimney pipes all day, and have a lazy time of it. In one place there was a great mound of weeds or stubble burning, and they watched the fire, so white in the daytime, flaring through the fog, with only here and there a dash of red in it, until in consequence, as she observed of the smoke, getting up her nose, Miss Slowboy choked. She could do anything of that sort on the smallest provocation, and woke the baby, who wouldn't go to sleep again. But Boxer, who was in advance some quarter of a mile or so, had already passed the outposts of the town, and gained the corner of the street where Caleb and his daughter lived, and long before they had reached the door, he and the blind girl were on the pavement waiting to receive them. Boxer, by the way, made certain delicate distinctions of his own in his communication with Bertha, which persuade me fully that he knew her to be blind. He never sought to attract her attention by looking at her, as he often did with other people, but touched her invariably. What experience he could ever have had of blind people or blind dogs, I don't know. He had never lived with a blind master, nor had Mr. Boxer the elder, nor Mrs. Boxer, nor any of his respectable family on either side ever been visited with blindness that I am aware of. He may have found it out for himself, perhaps, but he had got hold of it somehow, and therefore he had hold of Bertha too, by the skirt, and kept hold until Mrs. Peerybingle and the baby and Mrs. Slowboy and the basket were all got safely within doors. Primitivo. Yes, the basket. Don't drown in it, though. May Fielding was already come, and so was her mother, a little querulous chip of an old lady with a peevish face, who, in right of having preserved a waist like a bedpost, was supposed to be a most transcendent figure, and who, in consequence of having been once better off, or of labouring under an impression that she might have been if something had happened which never did happen, and seemed to have never been particularly likely to come to pass, but it's all the same, was very genteel and patronising indeed. Gruff and Tackleton was also there, doing the agreeable, and with the evident sensation of being as perfectly at home and as unquestionably in his own element as a fresh young salmon on the top of the Great Pyramid. "May, my dear old friend," cried Dot, running up to meet her, "what a happiness to see you!" Her old friend was, to the full, as hearty and as glad as she, and it really was, if you'll believe me, quite a pleasant sight to see them embrace. Tackleton was a man of taste beyond all question. May was very pretty. You know, sometimes when you're used to a pretty face, how when it comes into contact and comparison with another pretty face, it seems for the moment to be homely and faded, and hardly to deserve the high opinion you've had of it. Now, this was not at all the case, either with Dot or May, or for May's face set off Dot's, and Dot's face set off May's, so naturally and agreeably that, as John Peerybingle was very near saying when he came into the room, they ought to have been born sisters, which was the only improvement you could have suggested. Tackleton had brought his leg of mutton, and wonderful to relate, a tart besides, but we don't mind a little dissipation when our brides are in the case. We don't get married every day. And in addition to these dainties, there were the veal and ham pie, and things, as Mrs. Peerybingle called them, which were chiefly nuts and oranges and cakes and such small deer. When the repast was set forth on the board, flanked by Caleb's contribution, which was a great wooden bowl of smoking potatoes, he was prohibited by solemn compact from producing any other viands. Tackleton led his intended mother-in-law to the post of honour. For the better gracing of this place at the high festival, and the majestic old soul had adorned herself with a cap, calculated to inspire the thoughtless with sentiments of awe. She also wore her gloves, but let us be genteel or die. Caleb sat next to his daughter. Dot and her old schoolfellow were side by side. The good carrier took care of the bottom of the table. Miss Slowboy was isolated, for the time being, from every article of furniture but the chair she sat on, that she might have nothing else to knock the baby's head against. As Tilly stared about her at the dolls and toys, they stared at her and at the company. The venerable old gentlemen at the street doors, who were all in full action, showed a special interest in the party, pausing occasionally before leaping as if they were listening to the conversation, then plunging wildly over and over a great many times without halting for breath, as in a frantic state of delight with the whole proceedings. Certainly, if these old gentlemen were inclined to have a fiendish joy in the contemplation of Tackleton's discomfiture, they had good reason to be satisfied. Tackleton couldn't get on at all, and the more cheerful his intended bride became in Dot's society, the less he liked it, though he had brought them together for that purpose. For he was a regular dog in the manger, was Tackleton, and when they laughed, and he couldn't, he took it into his head immediately that they must be laughing at him. "Ah, May," said Dot, "dear, dear, what changes! To talk of these merry school days makes one young again." "Why, you ain't particularly old at any time, are you?" said Tackleton. "Look at my sobering, plodding husband there," returned Dot. "He adds 20 years to my age at least, don't you, John?" 40, John replied. "How many you'll add to Mary's, I'm sure I don't know," said Dot, laughing. "But she can't be much less than 100 years of age on her next birthday." "Ha ha 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 ha!" laughed Tackleton. Hollow as a drum, that laugh, though, and he looked as if he could have twisted Dot's neck comfortably. "Dear, dear," said Dot, "only to remember how we used to talk at school about the husbands we would choose. I don't know how young and how handsome and how gay and how lively mine was to be, and as to May's, oh dear, I don't know whether to laugh or cry when I think what silly girls we were." May seemed to know which to do, for the colour flushed into her face and tears stood in her eyes. Even the very person themselves, real live young men, were fixed on sometimes, said Dot. "We little thought how things would come about. I never fixed on John, I'm sure. I never so much as thought of him. And if I told you you were to be married to Mr. Tackleton, why, you'd have slapped me, wouldn't you, May?" Though May didn't say yes, she certainly didn't say no, or express no by any means. Tackleton laughed, quite shouted, he laughed so loud. John Peerybingle laughed too in his ordinary good-natured and contented manner, but his was a mere whisper of a laugh to Tackleton's. "You couldn't help yourself for all that. You couldn't resist us, you see," said Tackleton. Here we are. Where are your young gay bridegrooms now?" "Some of them are dead," said Dot, "and some of them forgotten. Some of them, if they could stand among us at this moment, would not believe we were the same creatures, would not believe that what they saw and heard was real, and we could forget them so. No, they would not believe one word of it." "Why, Dot," exclaimed the carrier, "little woman!" She had spoken with such earnestness and fire that she stood in need of some recalling to herself without doubt. Her husband's check was very gentle, for he merely interfered, as he supposed, to shield old Tackleton, but it proved effectual, for she stopped and said no more. There was an uncommon agitation even in her silence, which the wary Tackleton, who had brought his half-shut eye to bear upon her, noted closely, and remembered to some purpose too. May uttered no word, good or bad, but sat quite still with her eyes cast down, and made no sign of interest in what had passed. The good lady mother now interposed, observing, in the first instance, that the girls were girls, and bygones bygones, and that so long as young people were young and thoughtless, they would probably conduct themselves like young and thoughtless persons, with 2 or 3 other positions of a no less sound and incontrovertible character. She then remarked in a devout spirit that she thanked heaven she had always found in her daughter May a dutiful and obedient child, for which she took no credit to herself, though she had every reason to believe it was entirely owing to herself. With regard to Mr. Tackleton, she said, that he was in a moral point of view an undeniable individual, and that he was an eligible point of view a son-in-law to be desired, no one in their senses could doubt. She was very emphatic here. With regard to the family into which he was soon to be, after some solicitation to be admitted, she believed Mr. Tackleton knew that, although reduced in purse, it had some pretensions to gentility, and if certain circumstances, not wholly unconnected, she would go so far as to say with the indigo trade, but to which she would not particularly refer, had happened differently, it might perhaps have been in possession of wealth. She then remarked that she would not allude to the past, and would not mention that her daughter had for some time rejected the suit of Mr. Tackleton, and that she would not say a great many other things which she did say at great length. Finally, she delivered it as the general result of her observation and experience that those marriages in which there was at least of what was some romantically and sillily called love were always the happiest, and that she anticipated the greatest possible amount of bliss, not rapturous bliss, but the solid, steady-going article from the approaching nuptials. She concluded by informing the company that tomorrow was the day she had lived for, expressly, and then it was over, she would desire nothing better than to be packed up and disposed of in any genteel place of burial. As these remarks were quite unanswerable, which is the happy property of all remarks that were sufficiently wide of purpose, they changed the current of the conversation, and diverted the general attention to the veal and ham pie, the cold mutton, the potatoes, and the tart. In order that the bottled beer might not be slighted, John Peerybingle proposed to tomorrow, the wedding day, and called upon them to drink a bumper to it before he proceeded on his journey. I'll drink to that. Wouldn't disagree with you there. Prost. For you ought to know that he only rested there and gave the old horse a bait. He had to go some 4 or 5 miles farther on, and when he returned in the evening he called for Dot and took another rest on his way home. This was the order of the day, all on the picnic occasions, had been ever since their institution. There were 2 persons present, besides the bride and the bridegroom-elect, who did but indifferent honour to the toast. One of these was Dot, too flushed and discomposed to adapt herself to any small occurrence of the moment. The other Bertha, who rose up hurriedly before the rest and left the table. "Good day," said stout John Peerybingle, pulling on his dreadnought coat. "I shall be back at the old time. Goodbye, all." "Goodbye, John," returned Caleb. He seemed to say it by rote and to wave his hand in the same unconscious manner, for he stood observing Bertha with an anxious, wondering face that never altered his expression. "Goodbye, young shaver," said the jolly carrier, bending down to kiss the child, which Tilly Slowboy, now intent upon her knife and fork, had deposited asleep, and, strange to say, without damage, in a little cot of Bertha's fashioning. "Goodbye. Time will come, I suppose, when you'll turn out into the cold, my little friend, and leave your old father and enjoy his pipe and his rheumatics in the chimney corner, eh? Where's Dot?" "I'm here, John," she said, starting. Come, come," returned the carrier, clapping his sounding hands. "Where's the pipe?" "I quite forgot the pipe, John." Forgot the pipe? Was such a wonder ever heard of? She forgot the pipe. I'll fill it directly. It's done soon." But it was not so soon done either. It lay in the usual place, the carrier's dreadnought pocket, with a little pouch, her own work, from which she used to fill it. But her hand shook so that she entangled it, and yet her hand was small enough to have come out easily, I'm sure, and bungled terribly. The filling of the pipe and the lighting it, these little offices in which I have commended her discretion, were vilely done from the first to last. During the whole process, Tackleton stood looking on maliciously with the half-closed eye, which, whenever it met hers or caught it, for it can hardly be said to have ever met another eye, rather being a kind of trap to snatch it up, augmented her confusion in a most remarkable degree. "Why, what a clumsy Dot you are this afternoon," said John. "I could have done it myself better, I verily believe." With these good-natured words he strode away, and presently was heard, in company with Boxer and the old horse and the cart, marking lively music down the road. What time the dreamy Caleb still stood, watching his blind daughter with the same expression on his face. "Bertha," said Caleb softly, "what's happened? How changed you are, my darling, in a few hours since this morning. You silent and dull all day. What is this? Tell me." "Oh, father, father," cried the blind girl, bursting into tears. "Oh, hard, hard fate." Caleb drew his hand across his eyes before he answered her. But think how cheerful and happy you've been, Bertha. How good and how much loved by many people. That strikes me to my heart, dear father. Always so mindful of me, always so kind to me. Caleb was very much perplexed to understand her. To be blind, Bertha, my poor dear, he faltered, is a great affliction, but I have never felt it, cried the blind girl. I've never felt it in its fullness, never. I've sometimes wished that I could see you or could see him, only once, dear father, only for one little minute, that I know what it is I treasure up. She laid her hands upon her breast. And hold here, then I might be sure and have it right. And sometimes, but then I was a child, I've wept in my prayers at night to think that when your images ascended from high heart to heaven, they might not be the true resemblance of yourselves. But I've never had these feelings long. They passed away and left me tranquil and contented. And they will again, said Caleb. But father, my good gentle father, bear with me if I am wicked, said the blind girl. This is not the sorrow that so weighs me down. Her father could not choose but let his moist eyes overflow. She was so earnest and pathetic, but he could not understand her yet. Bring her to me, said Bertha. I cannot hold it closed and shut within myself. Bring her to me, father. She knew he hesitated and said, May, bring May. May heard mention of her name and coming quietly towards her, touched her on the arm. The blind girl turned immediately and held her by both hands. Look into my face. Dear heart, sweet heart, said Bertha. Read it with your beautiful eyes and tell me if the truth is written on it. Dear Bertha, yes. The blind girl, still upturning the blank, sightless face down which the tears were coursing fast, addressed her in these words. There is not in my soul or a wish or thought that is not for your good, bright May. There is not in my soul a grateful recollection stronger than the deep remembrance which is stored there of the many, many times when in the full pride of sight and beauty you have had consideration for blind Bertha, even when we two were children, or when Bertha was as much a child as ever blindness can be. Every blessing on your head, light upon your happy course, not the less, my dear May, and she drew towards her in a close grasp, not the less, my bird, because today the knowledge that you are to be his wife has wrung my heart almost to breaking. Father, May, Mary, oh forgive me that it is so, for the sake of all he has done to relieve the weariness of my dark life, and for the sake of belief you have in me, when I call heaven to witness that I could not wish him married to a wife more worthy of his goodness. While speaking, she had released May Fielding's hands and clasped her garments in an attitude of mingled supplication and love. Sinking lower and lower down as she proceeded in her strange confession, she dropped at last at the feet of her friend and hid her blind face in the folds of her dress. Great power, exclaimed her father, smitten at one blow with the truth. Have I deceived her from her cradle but to break her heart at last? It was well for all of them that Dot, that beaming, useful, busy little Dot, for such she was, whatever faults she had, and however you may learn to hate her in good time, it was well for all of them, I say, that she was there, or where this would have ended it was hard to tell. But Dot, recovering her self-possession, interposed before May could reply, or Caleb say another word. Come, Bertha, come away with me. Give her your arm, May, so. How composed she is, you see already, and how good it is of her to mind us, said the cheery little woman, kissing her upon the forehead. Come away, dear Bertha, come. And here's her good father will come with her, won't you, Caleb, to be sure? Now, I'm a little bit confused. Do we understand that she wants May to marry this guy? that you are to be his wife has wrung my heart this morning. Father, may Mary, for the sake of all he has done to relieve them as well. Yes. Okay. So her father's. Uh, all right, Steffi. I'm not sure if that's copyright worthy, but we can. I thought she didn't. That's what I'm thinking, Alison. But I'm a little bit confused because, uh, yeah, I'm. It's confusion. Um, um, well, we shall see. Well, well, she was a noble little dot in such things, and it must have been an obdurate nature that could have withstand her influence. When she had got poor Caleb and his Bertha away, that they might comfort and console each other, as she knew they only could, she presently came bouncing back. The saying is, as fresh as any daisy. I say fresher, to mount guard over that bridling little piece of consequence in the cap and gloves, and prevent the dear old creature from making discoveries. So, bring me the precious baby, Tilly, she said, drawing a chair to the fire, and I will have it sit in my lap. Here's Mrs. Fielding, Tilly will tell me all about the management of babies and put me right in 20 points where I'm as wrong as can be. Won't you, Mrs. Fielding? Not even the Welsh giant, who, according to the popular expression, was so slow as to perform a fatal surgical operation upon himself in emulation of a juggling trick achieved by his arch enemy at breakfast time, not even he fell half so readily into the snare prepared for him as the old lady did into this artful pitfall. The fact of Tackleton having walked out, and furthermore of 2 or 3 people having been talking together at a distance for 2 minutes, leaving her to her own resources, was quite enough to put in on her indignity, and the bewilderment of that mysterious convulsions in the indigo trade for 24 hours. But this becoming deference to her experience on the part of the young mother was so irresistible that after a short affectation of humility she began to enlighten her with the best grace in the world, and sitting bolt upright before the wicked Dot, she did, in half an hour, deliver more infallible domestic recipes and precepts than would, if acted on, have utterly destroyed and done up that young Peerybingle, though he had been an infant Samson. To change the theme, Dot did a little needlework. She carried the contents of a whole workbox in her pocket. However she contrived it, I don't know. Then did a little nursing, and then a little more needlework, then had a little whispering chat with May while the old lady dozed, and so in little bits of bustle, which was quite her manner always, found it a very short afternoon. Then, as it grew dark, and as it was a solemn part of this institution of the picnic that she should perform all Bertha's household tasks, she trimmed the fire, and swept the hearth, and set the tea-board out, and drew the curtain, and lighted a candle. And then she played an air or two on a rude kind of harp which Caleb had contrived for Bertha, and played them very well, for nature had made her delicate little ear as choice a one for music as it would have been for jewels if she had any to wear. By this time it was the established hour for having tea, and Tackleton came back again to share the meal and spend the evening. Caleb and Bertha had returned some time before, and Caleb had sat down to his afternoon's work. But he couldn't settle to it, poor fellow, being anxious and remorseful for his daughter. It was touching to see him sitting idle on his working stool, regarding her so wistfully, and always saying in his face, "Have I deceived her from her cradle but to break her heart?" When it was night and tea was done, and Dot had nothing more to do in washing up the cups and the saucers, in a word, for I must come to it, there is no use in putting it off, when the time drew nigh for expecting the carrier's return and every sound of distant wheels, Her manner changed again. Her colour came and went, and she was very restless. Not as good wives are when listening for their husbands. No. It was another sort of restlessness from that. Wheels heard, a horse's feet, the barking of a dog. The gradual approach of all the sounds, the scratching paw of Boxer at the door. "Whose step is that?" cried Bertha, starting up. "Whose step?" returned the carrier, standing in the portal, with his brown face ruddy as a winter berry from the keen night air. "Why, mine." "The other step," said Bertha. "The man's tread behind you." "She's not to be deceived," observed the carrier, laughing. "Come along, sir, you'll be welcome, never fear." He spoke in a loud tone, and as he spoke, the deaf old gentleman entered. "He's not so much a stranger that you haven't seen him once, Caleb," said the carrier. "You'll give him house room till we go?" "Oh, surely, John, and take it as an honour." "He's the best company on earth to talk secrets in," said John. "I have reasonable good lungs, but he tries him, I tell you. Sit down, sir, all friends here and glad to see you." When he had imparted this assurance in a voice that amply corroborated what he had said about his lungs, he added in his natural tone, "A chair in the chimney corner and leave to sit quite silent and look pleasantly about him is all he cares for. He's easily pleased." Bertha had been listening intently. She called Caleb to her side when he had set the chair and asked him in a low voice to describe their visitor. When he had done so, truly now, with scrupulous fidelity, she moved, for the first time since he had come in, and sighed, and seemed to have no further interest concerning him. The carrier was in high spirits, good fellow that he was, and fonder of his little wife than ever. "Clumsy dot she was this afternoon," he said, encircling her with his rough arm as she stood removing from the rest, "and yet I like her somehow. See yonder, Dot." He pointed to the old man. She looked down. I think she trembled. He's full of admiration for you," said the carrier. "Talked of nothing else the whole way here. Why, he's a brave old boy. I like him for it." "I wish you had had a better subject, John," she said with an uneasy glance about the room, at Tackleton especially. "A better subject?" cried the jovial John. "There's no such thing. Come, off with the greatcoat, off with the thick shawl, off with the heavy wrappers, and a cosy half-hour by the fire. My humble service, mistress. A game at cribbage, you and I. That's hearty. The cards on the board, Dot, and a glass of beer here, if there's any left, small wife." His challenge was addressed to the old lady, who, accepting it with gracious readiness, they were soon engaged upon a game. At first the carrier looked about him sometimes with a smile, or now and then called Dot to peep over his shoulder at his hand, and advised him on some knotty point. But his adversary, being a rigid disciplinarian, and subject to an occasional weakness in respect of pegging more than she was entitled to, required such vigilance on his part as left him neither eyes nor ears to spare. Thus his whole attention gradually became absorbed upon the cards, and he thought of nothing else until a hand upon his shoulder restored him to a consciousness of Tackleton. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but a word directly." "I'm going to deal," returned the character. "It's a crisis." "It is," said Tackleton. "Come here, man." There was that in his pale face which made the other rise immediately and ask him in a hurry what the matter was. "Hush, John Peerybingle," said Tackleton. "I'm sorry for this, I am indeed. I've been afraid of it. I've suspected it from the first." "What is it?" asked the carrier in a frightened aspect. "Hush! I'll show you if you'll come with me." The carrier accompanied him without another word. They went across a yard, where the stars were shining, and by a little side door into Tackleton's own counting-house, where there was a glass window commanding the ware-room, which was closed for the night. There was no light in the counting-house itself, but there were lamps in the long, narrow ware-room, and consequently the window was bright. "A moment," said Tackleton. "Can you bear to look through the window, do you think?" "Why not?" returned the carrier. "A moment more," said Tackleton. Don't commit any violence. It's of no use. It's too dangerous too. You're a strong-made man, and you might do murder before you know it." The carrier looked him in the face and recoiled a step as if he had been struck. In one stride he was at the window, and he saw, "Oh, shadow on the hearth. Oh, truthful cricket. Oh, perfidious wife." He saw her with the old man, old no longer, but erect and gallant, bearing in his hand the false white beard that had won his way into their desolate and miserable home. He saw her listening to him as he bent his head to whisper in her ear, and suffering him to clasp her around the waist as they moved slowly down the dim wooden gallery towards the door by which they had entered. He saw them stop, and saw her turn, to have the face he loved so presented to his view, and saw her with her own hands adjust a lie about his head, laughing as she did it at his unsuspicious nature. He clenched his strong right hand first, as if it would have been beaten down a lion, but opening it immediately again, he spread it out before the eyes of Tackleton, for he was tender of her even then, and so as they passed out, fell down upon a desk and was weak as any infant. He was wrapped up to the chin and busy with his horse and parcels when she came into the room, prepared for going home. "Now, John dear, good night, May. Good night, Bertha." Could she kiss them? Could she be blithe and cheerful in her parting? Could she venture to reveal her face to them without a blush? Yes. Tackleton observed her closely, and she did all this. Tilly was hushing the baby, and she crossed and recrossed Tackleton a dozen times, repeating drowsily, "Did the knowledge that it was to be its wives' then wring its hearts almost to breaking? And did its fathers deceive it from its cradles but to break its hearts at last? Now, Tilly, give me the baby. Good night, Mr. Tackleton. Where's John, for goodness sake?" "He's going to walk beside the horse's head," said Tackleton, who helped her to her seat. "My dear John, walk tonight?" The muffled figure of her husband made a hasty sign in the affirmative, and the false stranger and the little nurse being in their places, the old horse moved off. Boxer, the unconscious Boxer, running on before, running back, running round and round the cart, and barking as triumphantly and merrily as ever. When Tackleton gone off likewise, escorting May and her mother home, poor Caleb sat down by the fire beside his daughter, anxious and remorseful at the core, and still saying in his wistful contemplation of her, "Have I deceived her from her cradle but to break her heart at last?" The toys that had been set in motion for the baby had all stopped and run down long ago, and the faint light and silence, the imperturbably calm dolls and agitated rocking horses with distended eyes and nostrils, the old gentlemen at the street doors standing half doubled up upon their failing knees and ankles, the wry-faced nutcrackers, and the very beasts upon their way into the ark in twos, like a boarding school out walking, might have been imagined to be stricken motionless with fantastic wonder at Dot being false, or Tackleton beloved, under any combination of circumstances. Oh. Let's go back over that paragraph, because I'm not... So, every blessing on your head, light upon your happy cause, not the less, my dear May, not the less, my bird, because today the knowledge that you are to be his wife has wrung my heart almost to breaking. So Bertha's in love with Tackleton. Father, may forgive me that it is so, for the sake of all he has done to relieve the weariness of my dark life. For the sake of belief you have in me, when I call heaven to witness that I could not wish him married to a wife more worthy of his own goodness. So that's it. Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing that Caleb's done such a good job of bigging Tackleton up, even though he's an absolute grade a-hole, right? Exactly. Bertha loves Tackleton because her dad is a liar. You got it, Bianca. That's it. So that's where we're at. Anyway, that was Chirp the Second, and we're going to take a little sip of. She loves a fictional character, absolutely. But it happens. Oh my god, this Primitivo is so good. So that's why she was crying. And she's never felt blind until today. She realizes or is it that she feels blind because she thought that maybe there was a chance between her and Tackleton? I'm not sure she's worked out Dad's a liar yet, but I don't know. You could well be right there. The ice wine has not yet been challenged. I don't think Dot did anything wrong. I think this person is someone else that we don't know yet. I went with. Yeah, we didn't pour it down the drain. How dare you? It's on the kitchen shelf. She's miserable because her heart's broken. We've all been there. Oh, come on, bubbly now. You're telling me that girls have never broken other girls' hearts? I think that's the human condition. Better stick to MILFs like Istvan. It's true. At least you know what you're going to get there. Filthy little pig. What? Thanks, El Cannon, for fessing up. Stream is frozen for me. Chat hasn't. Grr. I'm not reading at the minute, so don't worry. Can someone tell Keta that I'm not reading at the minute? Thank you. The pain is not gendered. Absolutely. That is part of what's being human is to love and lose love and to overcome it, isn't it? I mean, yeah. There's a lot in this, Alison. Have you read this before, or is this just what you're making of it for tonight? I trust Ishvan to be a sassy, insecure cat. Cuddle pups. Cup. Oh no, I got it. Cuckold. All right, well that helps, I guess. Cutie pie. All right, that's another option. No, don't stop. Don't stop. Never stop. That's what she said. Yeah. Mean Dadzig, poor Mumstvan. Do you do you know how much shit he gives me? Hey? You guys are being mean to Mum again. Absolutely. All right. So anyway, going forward, we're going to find out what is love. Baby, don't hurt me. Well, we've got 30 more pages. We could be here a while. Well, 20 odd. Anyway. He speaks very highly of me when I'm not there. Oh, is that what it is? Well, I mean, I wouldn't give him shit if I didn't like him. This is the British way, right? You only tease the people, you make fun of the people you like. All right, chirp the third. The Dutch clock in the corner struck 10 when the carrier sat down by his fireside. So troubled and grief-worn that he seemed to scare the cuckoo, who, having cut his 10 melodious announcement as short as possible, plunged back into the Moorish palace again and clapped his little door behind him, as if the unwanted spectacle were too much for his feelings. If the little haymaker had been armed with the sharpest of scythes, and had cut at every stroke into the carrier's heart, he never could have gashed and wounded it as Dot had done. It was a heart so full of love for her, so bound up and held together by innumerable threads of winning remembrance, spun from the daily working of her many qualities of endearment. It was a heart in which she had enshrined herself so gently and so closely, a heart so single and so earnest in its truth, so strong in right, so weak in wrong, that it could cherish neither passion nor revenge at first, and had room only to hold the broken image of its idol. But slowly, slowly, as the carrier sat brooding on his hearth, now cold and dark, other fiercer thoughts began to rise within him, as an angry wind comes rising in the night. The stranger was 'neath his outraged roof. 3 steps would take him to his chamber door. 1 blow would beat it in. You might do murder before you know it, Tackleton had said. How could it be murder if he gave the villain time to grapple with him hand to hand? He was the younger man. It was an ill-timed thought, bad for the dark mood of his mind. It was an angry thought, goading him to some avenging act that should change the cheerful house into a haunted place which lonely travellers could dread to pass by night, and where the timid would see shadows struggling in the ruined windows when the moon was dim, and hear wild noises in the stormy weather. He was the younger man. Yes, some lover who had won the heart that he had never touched. Some lover of her early choice, of whom she had thought and dreamed, for whom she had pined and pined when he had fancied her so happy by his side. Oh, agony to think of it. She had been above stairs with the baby, getting it to bed. As he sat brooding on the hearth, she came close behind him without his knowledge. In the turning of the rack of his great misery, he lost all other sounds, and put her little stool at his feet. He only knew it when he felt her hand upon his own, and saw her looking up into his face. With wonder? No, it was his first impression, and he was fain to look at her again, to set it right. No, not with wonder, with an eager and inquiring look, but not with wonder. At first it was alarmed and serious, then it changed into a strange, wild, dreadful smile of recognition of his thoughts. Then there was nothing but her clasped hands on her brow, her head bent, and falling hair. Though the power of omnipotence had been his to wield at that moment, he had too much of its divine property of mercy in his breast to have turned 1 feather's weight of it against her. But he could not bear to see her crouching down upon the little seat where he had often looked on her with love and pride, so innocent and gay. And when she rose and left him, sobbing as she went, he felt it a relief to have the vacant place beside him rather than her so long cherished presence. This in itself was anguish keener than all, reminding how desolate he had become, and how the great bond of his life was rent asunder. The more he felt this, the more he knew he could have better borne to see her lying prematurely dead before him with a little child upon her breast. The higher and the stronger rose his wrath against his enemy. He looked about him for a weapon. There was a gun hanging on the wall. He took it down and moved a pace or two towards the door of the perfidious stranger's room. He knew the gun was loaded. Some shadowy idea that it was just to shoot this man like a wild beast seized him, and dilated in his mind until it grew into a monstrous demon in complete possession of him, casting out all milder thoughts and setting up its undivided empire. That phrase is wrong. Not casting out his milder thoughts, but artfully transforming them, changing them into scourges to drive him on, turning water into blood, love into hate, gentleness into blind ferocity. Her image, sorrowing, humbled, but still pleading to his tenderness and mercy with resistless power, never left his mind. But staying there, it urged him to the door, raised the weapon to his shoulder, fitted and nerved his finger to the trigger, and cried, "Kill him in his bed." He reversed the gun to beat the stock upon the door. He already held it lifted in the air. Some indistinct design was in his thoughts of calling out to him to fly, for God's sakes, by the window. When suddenly the struggling fire illumined the whole chimney with a glow of light, and the cricket on the hearth began to chirp. No sound he could have heard, no human voice, not even hers, could so have moved and softened him. The artless words in which she had told him of her love from the same cricket were once more freshly spoken. Her trembling, earnest manner at the moment was again before him. Her pleasant voice. Oh, what a voice it was, for making a household music at the fireside, and of an honest man, thrilled through and through his better nature and awoke it into life and action. He recoiled from the door, like a man walking in his sleep awakened from a frightful dream, and put the gun aside. Clasping his hands before his face, he then sat down again beside the fire and found relief in tears. The cricket on the hearth came into the room and stood in fairy shape before him. "I love it," said the fairy voice, repeating what he well remembered, "for the many times I have heard it, and the many thoughts its harmless music has given me." "She said so," cried the carrier. "True. This has been a happy home, John, and I love the cricket for its sake." "It has been, heaven knows," returned the carrier. "She made it happy always until now." "So gracefully sweet-tempered, so domestic, joyful, busy, and light-hearted," said the voice. "Otherwise I never could have loved her as I did," returned the carrier. The voice corrected him, said, "Do." The carrier repeated, "As I did," but not firmly. His faltering tongue resisted his control and would speak in its own way for itself and him. The figure, in an attitude of invocation, raised its hand and said, "Upon your own hearth." "The hearth she has blighted," interposed the character. "The hearth she has, how often, blessed and brightened," said the cricket. "The hearth which but for her were only a few stones and bricks and rusty bars, but which has been, through her, the altar of your home, and which you have nightly sacrificed some petty passion, selfishness, or care, and offered up the homage of a tranquil mind, a trusting nature, and an overflowing heart, so that the smoke from this poor chimney is gone upward with a better fragrance than the richest incense that is burnt before the richest shrines in all the gaudy temples of this world. Upon your own hearth, in its quiet sanctuary, surrounded by its gentle influences and associations, hear her, hear me, hear everything that speaks the language of your hearth and home. And pleads for her? Inquired the carrier. All things that speak the language of your hearth and home must plead for her, returned the cricket, for they speak the truth. And while the carrier, with his head upon his hands, continued to sit meditating in his chair, the present stood beside him, suggesting his reflections by its power and presenting them before him as in a glass or a picture. It was not a solitary presence. From the hearthstone, from the chimney, from the clock, the pipe, the kettle and the cradle, from the floor, the walls, the ceiling and the stairs, from the cart without and the cupboard within, and the household implements, from everything and every place with which she had ever been familiar, and with she had ever entwined one recollection of herself in her unhappy husband's minds, fairies came trooping forth, not to stand beside him as the cricket did, but to busy and bestir themselves, to do all honour to her image, to pull him by the skirts and point to it when it appeared, to cluster round it and embrace it and strew flowers for it to tread on, to try to crown its fair head with their tiny hands, to show that they were fond of it and loved it, that there was not one ugly, wicked, or accusatory creature to claim knowledge of it, none but their playful and approving selves. His thoughts were constant to her image. It was always there. She sat plying her needle before the fire and singing to herself, such a blithe, thriving, steady little Dot. The fairy figures turned upon him all at once, by one consent, with one prodigious concentrated stare, and seemed to say, Is this the light wife you are mourning for? There were sounds of gaiety outside, musical instruments and noisy tongues and laughter. A crowd of young merrymakers came in. Pouring in, among them were May Fielding and a score of pretty girls. Dot was the fairest of them all, as young as any of them. They came to summon her to join their party. It was a dance. If ever little foot were made for dancing, hers were, surely. But she laughed and shook her head and pointed to her cookery on the fire, and her table ready spread, with an exulting defiance that rendered her more charming than she was before. And so she merrily dismissed them, nodding to her would-be partners one by one as they passed, but with a comical indifference enough to make them go and drown themselves immediately if they were her admirers, and they must have been so, more or less, they couldn't help it. And yet indifference was not her character. No. For presently there came a certain carrier to the door, and bless her, what a welcome she bestowed upon him. Again the staring figures turned upon him all at once and seemed to say, Is this the wife who has forsaken you? A shadow fell upon the mirror or the picture, call it what you will. A great shadow of the stranger, as he first stood underneath their roof, covering its surface and blotting out all other objects. But the nimble fairies worked like bees to clear it off again, and Dot again was there, still bright and beautiful, rocking her little baby in its cradle, singing to it softly and resting her head upon a shoulder which had its counterpart in the musing figure by which the fairy cricket stood. The night, the real night, not going by fairy clocks, was wearing on. And in this stage of the carrier's thoughts, the moon burst out and shone brightly in the sky. Perhaps some calm and quiet light had risen also in his mind, and he could think more soberly of what had happened. Although the shadow of the stranger fell at intervals upon the glass, always distinct and big and thoroughly defined, it never fell so darkly as at first. When it appeared, the fairies uttered a general cry of consternation and plied their little arms and legs with inconceivable activity to rub it out. And whenever they got at Dot again and showed her to him once more bright and beautiful, They cheered in the most inspiring manner. They never showed her otherwise than beautiful and bright, for they were household spirits to whom falsehood is annihilation, and being so, what Dot was there for them but the one active, beaming, pleasant little creature who'd been the light and sun of the carrier's home? The fairies were prodigiously excited when they showed her with the baby, gossiping among a knot of sage old matrons and affecting to the wondrous old and matronly herself, and leaning in a staid demure old way upon her husband's arm, attempting, she, such a bud of a little woman, to convey the idea of having abjured the vanities of the world in general, and of being the sort of person to whom it was no novelty at all to be mother. Yet in the same breath they showed her laughing at the carrier for being awkward and pulling up his shirt collar to make him smart and mincing merrily about that very room to teach him how to dance. They turned and stared immensely at him when they showed her with the blind girl, for though she carried cheerfulness and animation with her wherever so she went, she bore those influences into Caleb Plummer's home, heaped up and running over. The blind girl's love for her, and trust in her, and gratitude to her, her own good busy way of setting Bertha's thanks aside, her dexterous little arts for filling up each moment of the visit in doing something useful to the house, and really working hard while feigning to make holiday, her bountiful provision of those standing delicacies, the veal and ham pie and the bottles of beer, her radiant little face arriving at the door and taking leave, the wonderful expression in her whole self from her neat foot to the crown of her head of being part of the establishment as something necessary to it, which it couldn't be without. All this the fairies revelled in and loved her for. And once again they looked upon him all at once, appealingly, as seemed to say, while some among them nestled in her dress and fondled her, "Is this the wife who has betrayed your confidence?" More than once, or twice, or thrice in the long thoughtful night, they showed her to him sitting on her favourite seat, with her head bent, her hands clasped on her brow, her falling hair, as he had seen her last. And when they found her thus, they neither turned nor looked upon him, but gathered close round her, and comforted and kissed her, and pressed on one another to show sympathy and kindness to her, and forget him altogether. Thus the night passed. The moon went down, the stars grew pale, the cold day broke, the sun rose. The carrier still sat, musing, in the chimney corner. He had sat there with his head upon his hands all night. All night the faithful cricket had been chirp, chirp, chirping on the hearth. All night he had listened to its voice. All night the household fairies had been busy with him. All night she had been amiable and blameless in the glass, except when that one shadow fell upon it. He rose up when it was broad day and washed and dressed himself. He couldn't go about his customary cheerful avocations. He wanted spirit for them, but it mattered the less that it was Tackleton's wedding day, and he had arranged to make his rounds by proxy. He thought to have gone merrily to church with Dot, but such plans were at an end. It was their own wedding day too. How little he had looked for such a close to such a year. The carrier had expected that Tackleton would pay him an early visit, and he was right. He had not walked to and fro before his own door many minutes when he saw the toy merchant coming in his chaise along the road. As the chaise drew nearer, he perceived that Tackleton was dressed out sprucely for his marriage, and that he had decorated his horse's head with flowers and favours. The horse looked much more like a bridegroom than Tackleton, whose half-closed eye was more disagreeably expressive than ever. But the carrier took little heed of this. His thoughts had other occupation. "John Peerybingle," said Tackleton with an air of condolence. "My good fellow, how do you find yourself this morning?" "I've had a poor night, Master Tackleton," returned the carrier, shaking his head, "for I've had been a good deal disturbed in my mind. But it's over now. Can you spare me half an hour or so for some private talk?" "I came on purpose," returned Tackleton, alighting. "Never mind the horse, he'll stand quiet enough with the reins over this post. I'll give him a mouthful of hay." The carrier having brought it from his stable and set it before him, they turned into the house. "You're not married before noon," he said, "I think." "No," answered Tackleton. Plenty of time. When they entered the kitchen, Tilly Slowboy was rapping at the stranger's door, which was only removed from it by a few steps. One of her very red eyes, for Tilly had been crying all night long because her mistress cried, was at the keyhole, and she was knocking very loud and seemed frightened. "If you please, I can't make nobody hear," said Tilly, looking round. "I hope nobody ain't gone and been died, if you please." This philanthropic wish Miss Slowboy emphasized with various new raps and kicks at the door, which led to no result whatever. "Shall I go?" said Tackleton. "It's curious." The carrier, who had turned his face from the door, signed to him to go if he would. So Tackleton went to Tilly Slowboy's relief, and he too kicked and knocked, and he too failed to get the least reply. But he thought of trying the handle of the door, and as it opened easily, he peeped in and looked in and went in, and soon came running out again. "John Peerybingle," said Tackleton in his ear, "I hope there's been nothing rash in the night." The carrier turned upon him quickly. "Because he's gone," said Tackleton, "and the window's open. I don't see any marks. To be sure, it's almost on level with the garden, but I was afraid there might have been some scuffle, eh?" He nearly shut up the expressive eye altogether. He looked at him so hard, and he gave his eye, his face, and his whole person a sharp twist, as if he could have screwed the truth out of him. "Make yourself easy," said the carrier. "He went into that room last night without harm in word or deed from me, and no one has entered it since. He is away of his own free will. I'd go out gladly at that door and beg my bread from house to house for life if I could so change the past that he had never come. But he's come and gone, and I've done with him." "Oh, well, I think he's got it pretty easy," said Tackleton, taking a chair. The sneer was lost upon the carrier, who sat down too and shaded his face with his hand for some little time before proceeding. "You showed me last night," he said at length, my wife that I love secretly and tenderly," insinuated Tackleton, "conniving at that man's disguise and giving him opportunities to meet her alone. I think there's no sight I wouldn't rather have seen than that. I think there's no man in the world I wouldn't have rather had to show it to me." "I confess to having had my suspicions always," said Tackleton. "That has made me objectionable here, I know." "But as you did show me," pursued the carrier, not minding him, "and as you saw her, my wife that I love." His voice and eye and hand grew steadier and firmer as he repeated those words, evidently in pursuance of a steadfast purpose. "As you saw her at this disadvantage, it is right and just that you should also see with my eyes and look into my breast, and know what my mind is upon the subject. For it's settled," said the carrier, regarding him attentively, "and nothing can shake it now." Tackleton muttered a few general words of assent about its being necessary to vindicate something or other, but he was overawed by the manner of his companion. Plain and unpolished as it was, it had something dignified and noble in it, which nothing but the soul of generous honour dwelling in man could have imparted. "I am a plain, rough man," pursued the carrier, "with very little to recommend me. I'm not a clever man, as you very well know. I'm not a young man. I love my little Dot because I had seen her grow up from a child in her father's house, because I knew how precious she was, because she had been my life for years and years. There's many men I can't compare with who never could have loved my little Dot like me, I think." He paused and softly beat the ground a short time with his foot before resuming. "I often thought that, though I wasn't good enough for her, I should make her a kind husband and perhaps know her value better than another. And in this way I reconciled it to myself and came to think it might be possible that we should be married. And in the end it came about, and we were married." "Ha!" said Tackleton, with a significant shake of the head. "I'd studied myself. I had experience of myself. I knew how much I loved her, and how happy I should be," pursued that carrier. "But I had not, I feel it now, sufficiently considered her." "Oh, to be sure," said Tackleton. "Giddiness, frivolity, fickleness of love, admiration, not considered, all out of sight. Ha!" "You'd best not interrupt me," said the carrier with some sternness, "till you understand me, and you're wide of doing so. If yesterday I'd have struck that man down at a blow who dared to breathe against a word against her today, I'd set my foot upon his face if he was my brother." I'll read that again. "If yesterday I'd have struck that man down at a blow who dared to breathe a word against her, today I'd set my foot upon his face if he was my brother." The toy merchant gazed at him in astonishment. He went on in a softer tone. "Did I consider," said the carrier, "that I took her at her age and with her beauty from her young companion, and the many scenes of which she was the ornament, in which she was the brightest little star that ever shone, to shut her up from day to day in my dull house and keep my tedious company? Did I consider how little suited I was to her sprightly humour, and how wearisome a plodding man like me must be to one of her quick spirit? Did I consider that it was no merit in me or claim in me that I loved her, when everybody must who knew her? Never. I took advantage of her hopeful nature and her cheerful disposition, and I married her. I wish I never had, for her sake, not for mine." The toy merchant gazed at him without winking. Even the half-shut eye was open now. "Heaven bless her," said the carrier, "for the cheerful constancy with which she tried to keep the knowledge of this from me. And heaven help me that in my slow mind I have not found it out before. Poor child, poor Dot. I not to find it out, who've seen her eyes fill with tears when such a marriage as our own was spoken of. I, who've been the secret trembling on her lips 100 times, and never suspected it till last night. Poor girl, that I could ever hope she would be fond of me, that I could ever believe she was." "Well, she made a show of it," said Tackleton. "She made such a show of it that, to tell you the truth, it was the origin of my misgivings." And here he asserted the superiority of May Fielding, who certainly made no sort of show of being fond of him. "She's tried," said the poor carrier with great emotion than he had exhibited yet. "I only now begin to know how hard she has tried to be my dutiful and zealous wife, how good she has been, how much she has done, how brave and strong a heart she has. Let the happiness I have known under this roof bear witness. It will be some help and comfort to me when I am here alone." "Here alone?" said Tackleton. "Oh, then you mean to take some notice of this?" "I mean," returned the carrier, "to do her the greatest kindness and make her the best reparation in my power. I can release her from the daily pain of an unequal marriage and the struggle to conceal it. She shall be as free as I can render her." "Make her reparation?" exclaimed Tackleton, twisting and turning his great ears with his hands. There must be something wrong here. You didn't say that, of course." The carrier set his grip upon the collar of the toy merchant and shook him like a reed. Listen to me, he said, and take care that you hear me right. Listen to me. Do I speak plainly? Very plainly indeed, answered Tackleton. As if I meant it? Very much as if you meant it. I sat upon that hearth last night, all night, exclaimed the carrier, on the spot where she has often sat beside me with her sweet face looking into mine. I called up her whole life, day by day. I had her dear self in its very passage, and every passage in review before me. And upon my soul she is innocent, if there is one to judge the innocent and the guilty. Staunch cricket on the hearth, loyal household fairies, passion and distrust have left me, said the carrier, and nothing but my grief remains. In an unhappy moment, some old lover, better suited to her tastes and years than I, forsaken perhaps for me against her will, returned. In an unhappy moment, taken by surprise, and wanting time to think of what she did, she made herself a party to his treachery by concealing it. Last night she saw him in the interview we witnessed. It was wrong, but otherwise in this she is innocent if there is a truth on earth. If that is your opinion, Tackleton began. So let her go, pursued the carrier. Go with my blessings for the many happy hours she has given me, and my forgiveness for any pang she has caused me. Let her go, and have the peace of mind I wish her. She'll never hate me. She'll learn to like me better when I'm not a drag upon her, and wears the chain I have riveted more lightly. This is the day on which I took her, with so little thought for her enjoyment from her home. Today she shall return to it, and I will trouble her no more. Her father and mother will be here today. We've made a little plan for keeping it together, and they shall take her home. I can trust her, there or anywhere. She leaves me without blame, and she will live so, I'm sure. If I should die, I may perhaps while she is young. I've lost some courage in a few hours. She'll find that I remembered her and loved her to the last. This is the end of what you have showed me. Now it's over. Oh no, John, not over. Do not say it's over yet. Not quite yet. I've heard your noble words. I could not steal away pretending to be ignorant of what has affected me with such deep gratitude. Do not say it's over till the clock has struck again. She had entered shortly after Tackleton, and had remained there. She never looked at Tackleton, but fixed her eyes upon her husband. But she kept away from him, setting as wide a space as possible between them. And though she spoke with most impassioned earnestness, she went no nearer to him even then. How different in this from her old self. No hand can make the clock which will strike again for me the hours that are gone, replied the carrier with a faint smile. But let it be so, if you will, my dear. It will strike soon. It's of little matter what we say. I try to please you in a harder case than that. Well, muttered Tackleton, I must be off. When the clock strikes again, it'll be necessary for me to be upon my way to the church. Good morning, John Peerybingle. I'm sorry to be deprived of the pleasure of your company. Sorry for the loss and the occasion of it too. I have spoken plainly, said the carrier, accompanying him to the door. Oh, quite. And you remember what I have said? Why, if you compel me to make the observation, said Tackleton, previously taking the precaution of getting into his shares, I must say that it was so very unexpected that I'm far from likely to forget it. The better for the both of us, returned the carrier. Goodbye. I give you joy. I wish I could give it to you, said Tackleton. As I can't, thank ye. Between ourselves, as I told you before, hey? I don't much think I shall have the less joy in my married life because May hasn't been too officious about me and too demonstrative. Goodbye. Take care of yourself. The carrier stood looking after him until he was smaller in the distance than his horse's flowers and favours near at hand. And then, with a deep sigh, went strolling like a restless, broken man among some neighbouring elms, unwilling to return until the clock was on the eve of striking. His little wife, being left alone, sobbed piteously, but often dried her eyes and checked herself to say how good he was, how excellent he was, and once or twice she laughed so heartily, triumphantly, and incoherently, still crying all the time, that Tilly was quite horrified. "Oh, if you please don't," said Tilly. "It's enough to dead and bury the baby, so it is, if you please." "Will you bring him sometimes to see his father, Tilly?" inquired her mistress, drying her eyes. "When I can't live here and have gone to my old home?" "Oh, if you please don't," cried Tilly, throwing back her head and bursting into a howl. She looked at that moment uncommonly like Boxer. "Oh, please, if you don't. Oh, what was everybody gone and be done with everybody, making everybody else so wretched? Oh." The soft-hearted slow boy trailed off at this juncture into such a deplorable howl, the more tremendous from its long suppression, that she must infallibly have awakened the baby and frightened him into something serious, probably convulsions, if her eyes had not encountered Caleb Blummer leading up his daughter. This spectacle restoring her to a sense of her proprieties, she stood for some moments silent with her mouth wide open, then, posting off to the bed on which the baby lay asleep, danced in a weird St. Vitus manner on the floor, and at the same time rummaged with her face and head among the bedclothes, apparently deriving much relief from these extraordinary operations. "Mary," said Bertha, "not at the marriage." "I told her you would not be there, Mum," whispered Caleb. "I heard as much last night, but bless you," said the little man, taking her tenderly by both hands. "I don't care for what they say. I don't believe them. They ain't much of me, but that little should be torn to pieces sooner than I'd trust a word against you." "Bertha couldn't stay at home this morning," said Caleb. "She was afraid, I know, to hear the bells ring, and couldn't trust herself to be so near to them on their wedding day. So we started in good time and came here." "I've been thinking of what I've done," said Caleb after a moment's pause. "I've been blaming myself till I hardly know what to do or where to turn, for the distress of mind I've caused her. I've come to the conclusion that I'd better, if you'll stay with me, Mum, the while, tell her the truth. You'll stay with me the while?" he inquired, trembling from head to foot. "I don't know what effect it may have upon her. I don't know what she'll think of me. I don't know that she'll ever care for her poor father afterwards. But it's best for her that she should be undeceived, and I must bear the consequences I deserve." "Mary," said Bertha, "where is your hand?" Here it is, pressing it to her lips with a smile and drawing it through her arm. "I heard them speaking softly among themselves last night of some blame against you. They were wrong." The carrier's wife was silent, and Caleb answered for her. "They were wrong," he said. "I knew it," cried Bertha proudly. "I told them so. I scorned to hear a word blame her with justice." She pressed the hand between her own and the soft cheek against her face. "No, I am not so blind as that." Her father went on one side of her, while Dot remained upon the other, holding her hand. I know you all," said Bertha. "Better than you think. But not so well as her, not even you, Father. There's nothing half so real and so true about me as she is. If I could be restored to sight this instant, and not a word was spoken, I would choose her from a crowd, my sister." "Bertha, my dear," said Caleb, "I have something on my mind I want to tell you, while we three are alone. Hear me kindly. I have a confession to make to you, my darling." "A confession, Father?" "I have wandered from the truth and lost myself, my child," said Caleb with a pitiable expression in his bewildered face. "I have wandered from the truth, intending to be kind to you, and have been cruel." She turned her wonder-stricken face towards him and repeated, "Cruel? He accuses himself too strongly, Bertha, said Dot. You'll say so presently. You'll be the first to tell him so. He cruel to me, cried Bertha, with a smile of incredulity. Not meaning it, my child, said Caleb. But I have been, though I never suspected it till yesterday. But I have been, though I never suspected it until yesterday. My dear blind daughter, hear me and forgive me. The world you live in, heart of mine, doesn't exist as I have represented it. The eyes you have trusted in have been false to you. She turned her wonder-stricken face towards him still, but drew back and clung closer to her friend. Your road in life was rough, my poor one, said Caleb, and I meant to smooth it for you. I've altered objects, changed the characters of people, invented many things that have never been to make you happier. I've had concealments from you, put deceptions on you, God forgive me, and surrounded you with fancies. But living people are not fancies, she said hurriedly, and turned pale, still retiring from him. You can't change them. I've done so, Bertha, pleaded Caleb. There is one person that you know, my dove. Father, why do you say I know? She answered in a tone of keen approach. What and whom do I know? I who have no leader, I am so miserably blind. In the anguish of her heart, she stretched out her hands, as if she were groping her way, then spread them in a manner most forlorn and sad upon her face. The marriage that takes place today, said Caleb, is with a stern, sordid, grinding man, a hard master to you and me, my dear, for many years, ugly in his looks and in his nature, cold and callous ways, always, unlike what I have painted him to you in everything, my child, in everything. Why, cried the blind girl, tortured, as it seemed almost beyond endurance. Why did you ever do this? Why did you ever fill my heart so full, and then come in like death and tear away the objects of my love? Oh, heaven, how bland I am, how helpless and alone. Her afflicted father hung his head, and offered no reply but his penitence and sorrow. She had been but a short time in this passion of regret, when the cricket on the hearth, unheard by all but her, began to chirp. Not merrily, but in a low, faint, sorrowing way. It was so mournful that her tears began to flow, and when the presence which had been beside the carrier all night appeared behind her, pointing to her father, they fell down like rain. She heard the cricket voice more plainly soon, and was conscious, through her blindness, of the presence hovering about her father. Mary, said the blind girl, tell me what my home is, what it truly is. It is a poor place, Bertha, very poor and bare indeed. The house will scarcely keep out wind and rain another winter. It is roughly shielded from the weather, Bertha, Dot continued in a low, clear voice, as your poor father in his sackcloth coat. The blind girl, greatly agitated, rose and led the carrier's little wife aside. Those presents that I took such care of, that came almost at my wish, and were so dearly welcome to me, she said, trembling. Where did they come from? Did you send them? No. Who then? Dot saw she knew already and was silent. The blind girl spread her hands before her face again, but in quite another manner now. Dear Mary, a moment, one moment, more this way. Speak softly to me. You are true, I know. You do not deceive me now, would you? No, Bertha, indeed. No, I am sure you would not. You have too much pity for me. Mary, look across the room to where we were just now, to where my father is. My father, so compassionate and loving to me. And tell me what you see. I see said Dot, who understood her well. An old man sitting in a chair and leaning sorrowfully on the back with his face resting on his hand, as if his child should comfort him, Bertha. Yes, she will. Go on. He's an old man, worn with care and work. He's a spare, dejected, thoughtful, grey-haired man. I see him now, despondent and bowed again, and striving against nothing. But, Bertha, I have seen him many times before, and striving hard in many ways for one great sacred object, and I honour his grey head and bless him. The blind girl broke away from her, and throwing herself upon her knees before him, took the grey head to her breast. It is my sight restored, it is my sight, she cried. I've been blind and now my eyes are open. I never knew him. To think how I might have died and never truly seen the Father who's been so loving to me. There were no words for Caleb's emotion. There is not a gallant figure on this earth, exclaimed the blind girl, holding him in her embrace, that I would love so dearly and would cherish so devotedly as this. The greyer and more worn, the dearer Father, never let them say I am blind again. There's not a furrow in his face, there's not a hair upon his head that shall be forgotten in my prayers and thanks to heaven. Caleb managed to articulate, My Bertha. And in my blindness I believed him, said the girl, caressing him with tears of exquisite affection, to be so different, and having him beside me day by day, so mindful of me always, never dreamed of this. The fresh smart father in his blue coat, Bertha, said poor Caleb. He's gone. Nothing is gone, she answered. Dearest father, no, everything is here, in you. The father that I loved so well, the father that I never loved enough and never knew, the benefactor whom I first began to reverence and love because he had such sympathy for me. All are here in you. Nothing is dead to me. The soul of all that was most dear to me is here with the worn face and the grey head. I am not blind, Father, any longer. Dot's whole attention had been concentrated during this discourse upon the father and the daughter, but looking now towards the little haymaker in the moorish meadow, she saw that the clock was within a few minutes of striking, and fell immediately into a nervous and excited state. Father, said Bertha, hesitating. Mary. Yes, my dear, returned Caleb. She is here. There is no change in her. You never told me anything of her that was not true. I should have done it, my dear, I'm afraid, returned Caleb, if I could have made her better than she was. But I must have changed her for the worse, if I had changed her at all. Nothing could improve her, Bertha. Confident as the blind girl had been when she asked the question, her delight and pride in the reply and her renewed embrace of Dot were charming to behold. More changes than you think for may happen, though, my dear, said Dot. Changes for the better, I mean. Changes for great joy to some of us. You mustn't let them startle you too much, if any such thing should ever happen and affect you. Are those wheels upon the road? You've a quick ear, Bertha. Are they wheels? Yes, coming very fast. I know you have a quick ear, said Dot, placing her hand upon her heart, and evidently talking on as fast as she could to hide its palpitating state, because I have noticed it often, and because you were so quick to find out that strange step last night, though why you should have said it, as I very well recollect you did, Bertha. Whose step is that? And why you should have taken any great observation of it than of any other step, I don't know. Though, as I said just now, there are great changes in the world, great changes, and we can't do better than prepare ourselves to be surprised at hardly anything. Caleb wondered what this meant, perceiving that she spoke to him no less than to his daughter. He saw her with astonishment, so fluttered and distressed that she could scarcely breathe, and holding to a chair to save herself from falling. They are wheels indeed, she panted, coming nearer, very close. And now you hear them stopping at the garden gate, and now you hear a step outside the door, the same step, Bertha, is it not? And now... She uttered a wild cry of uncontrollable delight, and running up to Caleb, put her hands upon his eyes, as a young man rushed into the room and, flinging his hat into the air, came sweeping down upon them. "Is it over?" cried Dot. "Yes." "Happily over?" "Yes." "Do you recollect the voice, dear Caleb? Did you ever hear the like of it before?" cried Dot. "If my boy in the gold South Americas was alive," said Caleb, trembling. "He is alive," shrieked Dot, removing her hands from his eyes and clapping them in ecstasy. "Look at him. See where he stands before you, healthy and strong. Your dear old son. Your dear old living, loving brother, Bertha." All honour to the little creature for her transports, all honour to her tears and laughter when the three were locked in one another's arms. All honour to the heartiness with which she met the sunburnt sailor fellow with his dark streaming hair halfway, and never turned her rosy little mouth aside, but suffered him to kiss it freely and to press her to his bounding heart. And honour to the cuckoo too, why not? For bursting out of the trap-door in the Moorish palace like a housebreaker, and hiccoughing 12 times on the assembled company, as if he had drunk for joy. The carrier, entering, started back, and well he might, to find himself in such good company. "Look, John," said Caleb exultingly. "Look here, my boy from golden South America, my own son, him that you fitted out and sent away yourself, him that you were always such a friend to." The carrier advanced to seize him by the hand, but recoiling as some feature in his face awakened the remembrance of the deaf man in the cart, said, "Edward, was it you?" "Now tell him all," cried Dot. "Tell him all, Edward, and don't spare me, for nothing shall take me spare myself in his eyes ever again." "I was the man," said Edward. "And could you steal disguise into the house of your old friend?" rejoined the carrier. "There was a frank boy once, and how many years is it, Caleb, since we heard that he was dead and had proved it, we thought? We never would have done that." "There was a generous friend of mine once, more a father to me than a friend," said Edward, "who never would have judged me or any other man unheard. You were he. So I'm certain you will hear me now." The carrier, with a troubled glance at Dot, who still kept far away from him, replied, "Well, that's but fair, I will." "You must know that when I left here a boy," said Edward, "I was in love, and my love was returned. She was very young, a girl, perhaps, you may tell me. She didn't know her own mind. But I knew mine, and I had passion for her." "You had?" exclaimed the carrier. "You?" "Indeed I had," returned the other, "and she returned it. I've ever since believed she did, and now I'm sure she did." "Oh, heaven help me," cried the carrier. "This is worse than all." "Constant to her," said Edward, "and returning full of hope after many hardships and perils, to redeem my part of our old contract, I heard 20 miles away that she was false to me, that she had forgotten me and had bestowed herself upon another and a richer man. I had no mind to reproach her, but I wished to see her, and to prove beyond dispute that this was true. I hoped she might have been forced into it against her own desire and recollection. It would be small comfort, but it would be some, I thought, and on I came. That I might have the truth, the real truth, observing freely for myself and judging for myself without obstruction on the one hand, or presenting my own influence if I had any before her on the other, I dressed myself unlike myself, you know how, and waited on the road, you know where. You had no suspicion of me, neither had she, pointing to Dot, until I whispered in her ear at the fireside, and she so nearly betrayed me. But when she knew that Edward was alive and had come back," sobbed Dot, now speaking for herself as she had burned to do all through this narrative, "and when she knew his purpose, she advised him by all means to keep his secret close. For his old friend John Peerybingle was much too open in his nature and too clumsy in all his artifice, being a clumsy man in general," said Dot, half laughing and half crying, "to keep it for him. And when she," "That's me, John," sobbed the little woman, "told him all, and how his sweetheart had believed him to be dead, and how at last she'd been overpersuaded by her mother into a marriage which the silly, dear old thing called advantageous, and when she's me, that's me again, John, told him they were not yet married, though close upon it, and it would be nothing but a sacrifice if it went on, for there was no love on her side, and he went nearly mad with joy to hear it. Then she, that's me again, said she would go between them, as she had often done before in old times, John, and would sound his sweetheart and be sure that what she, me again, John, said and thought was right, and it was right, John. And they were brought together, John, and they were married, John, an hour ago, and here's the bride. And Gruff and Tackleton may die a bachelor, and I'm a happy little woman. May God bless you. She was an irresistible little woman, if that be anything to the purpose, and never so completely irresistible as in her present transport. There never were congratulations so endearing and delicious as those she lavished on herself and on the bride. Amid the tumult of emotions in his breast, the honest carrier stood confused. Flying now towards her, Dot stretched out her hand to stop him and retreated as before. No, John, no, hear all. Don't love me any more, John, till you've heard every word I have to say. It was wrong to have a secret from you, John. I'm very sorry. I didn't think it any harm till I came and sat down by you on the little stool last night. But when I knew by what was written in your face that you'd seen me walking in the gallery with Edward, and when I knew what you thought, I felt how giddy and how wrong it was. But oh dear John, how could you think so? Little woman, how she sobbed again. John Peerybingle would have caught her in his arms, but no, she wouldn't let him. Don't love me yet, John, please. Not for a long time yet. When I was sad about this intended marriage, dear, it was because I remembered May and Edward such young lovers, and knew that her heart was far away from Tackleton. You believe that now, don't you, John? John was going to make another rush at this appeal, but she stopped him again. No, keep there, please, John. When I laugh at you, as I sometimes do, John, and call you a clumsy and dear old goose and names of that sort, is because I love you, John, so well, and take such pleasure in your ways, and wouldn't see you altered in the least respect to have you made a king tomorrow. Hurrah! Said Caleb with unusual vigour. My opinion! And when I speak of people being middle-aged and steady, John, and pretend that we're a humdrum couple going on in a jog sort of way, it's only because I'm such a silly little thing, John, that I like sometimes to act a kind of play with baby and all that, and make believe. She saw that he was coming and stopped him again, but she was nearly too late. No, don't love me for another minute or two, if you please, John. What I want most to tell you, I've kept to the last. My dear, good, generous John, when we were talking the other night about the cricket, I had it on my lips to say that at first I did not love you quite as dearly as I do now, that when I first came home here, I was half afraid I mightn't learn to love you every bit as well as I hoped and prayed I might, being so very young, John. But dear John, every day and hour I loved you more and more. And if I could have loved you better than I do, the noble words I heard you say this morning and would have made me, but I can't. All the affection that I had, it was a great deal, John, I gave to you, as you well deserve, long, long ago, and I have no more left to give. Now, my dear husband, take me to your heart again. That's my name. That's my home, John, and never, never think of sending me to any other. You will never derive so much delight from seeing a glorious little woman in the arms of a third party as you would have felt if you had seen Dot run into the carrier's embrace. It was the most complete, unmitigated, soul-fraught little piece of earnestness that ever you beheld in all your days. You may be sure that the carrier was in a state of perfect rapture, and you may be sure that Dot was likewise, and you may be sure they all were, inclusive of Miss Slowboy, who wept copiously for joy, and wishing to include her young charge in the general interchange of congratulations, handed round the baby to everybody in succession, as if it was something to drink. But now the sound of wheels was heard again outside the door, and somebody exclaimed that Gruff and Tackleton was coming back. Speedily that worthy gentleman appeared, looking warm and flustered. "Well, what the devil is this, John Peerybingle?" said Tackleton. "There's some mistake. I appointed Mrs. Tackleton to meet me at the church, and I swear I passed on the road on her way here." "Oh, here she is. I beg your pardon, sir. I haven't the pleasure of knowing you. But if you can do me the favour to spare this young lady, she has a rather particular engagement this morning." "But I can't spare her," returned Edward. "I couldn't think of it." "What do you mean, you vagabond?" said Tackleton. "I mean that as I can make allowance for your being vexed," returned the other with a smile, "I am as deaf to harsh discourse this morning as I was to all discourse last night." The look that Tackleton bestowed upon him, and the start he gave. "I am sorry, sir," said Edward, holding out May's left hand, and especially the third finger, "that the young lady can't accompany you to church, but as she has been there once this morning, perhaps you'll excuse her." Tackleton, looking hard at the third finger, took a I'll backtrack a little bit. Tackleton looked hard at the third finger and took a little piece of silver paper, apparently containing a ring, from his waistcoat pocket. "Miss Slowboy," said Tackleton, "will you have the kindness to throw that in the fire? Thank you." "It was a previous engagement, quite an old engagement, that prevented my wife from keeping her appointment with you, I assure you," said Edward. "Mr. Tackleton will do me the justice to acknowledge that I revealed it to him faithfully, and that I told him many times I could never forget it," said May, blushing. "Oh, certainly," said Tackleton. "To be sure. Oh, it's all right, it's quite correct. Mrs. Edward Plummer, I infer." "That's the name," returned the bridegroom. "I should have known you, sir," said Tackleton, scrutinizing his face narrowly and making a low bow. "I give you joy, sir." "Thank ye." "Mrs. Peerybingle," said Tackleton, turning suddenly to where she stood with her husband, "I'm sorry. You haven't done me a very great kindness, but upon my life, I am sorry. You are better than I thought you. John Peerybingle, I am sorry. You understand me? That's enough. It's quite correct, ladies and gentlemen, all, and perfectly satisfactory. Good morning." With these words he carried it off, and carried himself off too, merely stopping at the door to take the flowers and favours from his horse's head, and to kick that animal once in the ribs, as a means of informing him that there was a screw loose in his arrangements. Of course it became a serious duty now to make such a day of it, as should mark these events for a high feast and festival in Peerybingle calendar for evermore. Accordingly, Dot went to work to produce such an entertainment as should reflect undying honour on the house, on everyone concerned, in a very short space of time. She was up to her dimpled elbows in flour, and whitening the carrier's coat every time he came near her by stopping him to give him a kiss. That good fellow washed the greens and peeled the turnips and broke the plates and upset iron pots full of cold water on the fire, and made himself useful in all sorts of ways, while a couple of professional assistants, hastily called in from somewhere in the neighbourhood, as on a point of life or death, ran against each other in all the doorways and round all the corners, and everybody tumbled over Tilly Slowboy and the baby everywhere. Tilly never came out in such force before. Her ubiquity was the theme of general admiration. She was a stumbling block in the passage at 25 past 2, a man-trap in the kitchen at 2:30 precisely, and a pitfall in the garret at 23 to 3. The baby's head was, as it were, a test and touchstone for every description of matter, animal, vegetable, and mineral. Nothing was in use that day that didn't come, at some time or other, into close acquaintance with it. Then there was a great expedition set on foot to go and find out Mrs. Fielding, and to be dismally penitent to that excellent gentleman and woman, and to bring her back by force, if needful, to be happy and forgiving. And when the expedition first discovered her, she would listen to no terms at all, but said an unspeakable number of times that ever she should have lived to see the day. I couldn't be got to say anything else except, "Now carry me to the grave." which seemed absurd on account of her not being dead or anything at all like it. After a time, she lapsed into a state of dreadful calmness, and observed that when that unfortunate train of circumstances had occurred in the indigo trade, she had foreseen that she would be exposed during her whole life to every piece of insult and contumely, and that she was glad to find it was the case, and begged they wouldn't be troubled for themselves about her, for what was she, oh dear, a nobody, but would forget that such a being lived and would take her course in life without her. From this bitterly sarcastic mood, she passed into an angry one, in which she gave vent to the remarkable expression that the worm would turn if trodden on. And after that, she yielded to a soft regret, and said, if they had only given her her confidence, she might not have had it in her power to suggest. Taking advantage of this crisis in her feelings, the expedition embraced her, and she very soon had her gloves on, and she was on her way to John Peerybingle's in a state of unimpeachable gentility, with a paper parcel at her side, containing a cap of state, almost as tall and quite as stiff as a mitre. Then there were Dot's mother and father to come, in another little chaise, and they were behind their time, and fears were entertained, and there was much looking out for them down the road. And Mrs. Fielding always would look in the wrong and morally impossible direction, and being apprised thereof, hoped she might take the liberty of looking where she pleased. At last they came, a chubby little couple, jogging along in a snug and comfortable little way that quite belonged to the Dot family. And her Dot and her mother, side by side, were wonderful to see. They were so like each other. Then Dot's mother had to renew her acquaintance with May's mother, and May's mother always stood on her gentility, and Dot's mother never stood on anything but her active little feet. And old Dot, so to call Dot's father, I forget it wasn't his right name, but never mind, took liberties and shook hands at first sight, and seemed to think a cap but so much starch and muslin, and didn't defer himself at all to the indigo trade, but said there was no help for it now. And in Mrs. Fielding's summing up, was a good-natured kind of man, but coarse, my dear. I wouldn't have missed Dot doing the honours in her own wedding gown by benison on her bright face, for any money, no, nor the good carrier, so jovial and so ruddy at the bottom of the table, nor the brown, fresh sailor fellow and his handsome wife, nor any one of them among them. To have missed the dinner would have been to miss as jolly and as stout a meal as man would need eat, and to miss the overflowing cups in which they drank the wedding day would have been the greatest miss of all. After dinner, Caleb sang the song about the sparkling bowl, and as I'm a living man hoping to keep so for a year or two, he sang it through. And by the by, a most unlooked-for incident occurred just as he finished the last verse. There was a tap at the door, and a man came staggering in, without saying with your leave or by your leave, without something heavy on his head. Setting this down in the middle of the table, symmetrically in the centre of the nuts and the apples, he said, Mr. Tackleton's compliments. As he has said he's got no use for the cake himself, perhaps you'll eat it. And with these words he walked off. There was some surprise among the company, as you may imagine. Mrs. Fielding, being a lady of infinite discernment, suggested that the cake was poisoned, and related a narrative of a cake which, in her knowledge, had turned a seminary for young ladies blue. But she was overruled by acclamation, and the cake was cut by May with much ceremony and rejoicing. I don't think anyone had tasted it when there came another tap at the door, and the same man appeared again, having under his arm a vast brown paper parcel. Mr. Tackle's compliments, as he sent it too few toys for the babbies. They ain't ugly. After the delivery of which expressions, he retired again. The whole party would have experienced great difficulty in finding words for their astonishment, even if they had had ample time to seek them, but they had none at all, for the messenger had scarcely shut the door behind him when there came another tap, and Tackleton himself walked in. Mrs. Peerybingle, said the toy merchant, hat in hand, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, more sorry than I was this morning. I've had time to think upon it. John Peerybingle, I'm sour by disposition. But I can't help being sweetened, more or less, by coming face to face with such a man as you. Caleb, this unconscious little nurse, gave me a broken hint last night of which I have found the thread. I blush to think how easily I might have bound you and your daughter to me, and what a miserable idiot I was when I took her for one. Friends, one and all, my house is very lonely tonight. I have not so much as a cricket on my hearth. I have scared them all away. Be gracious to me. Let me join this happy party. He was at home in 5 minutes. You never saw such a fellow. What had he been doing with himself all his life, never to have known before with his great capacity of being jovial? Or what had the fairies been doing with him to have effected such a change? John, you won't send me home this evening, will you? Whispered Dot. He had been very near it, though. There wanted but one living creature to make the party complete, and in the twinkling of an eye, there he was, very thirsty with hard running and engaged in hopeless endeavours to squeeze his head into a narrow pitcher. He'd gone with the cart to its journey's end, very much disgusted with the absence of his master, and stupendously rebellious to the deputy. After lingering about the stable for some little time, vainly attempting to incite the old horse to the mutinous act of returning on his own account, he had walked into the tap-room and laid himself down before the fire. But, suddenly yielding to the conviction that the deputy was a humbug and must be abandoned, he got up and turned tail and come home. There was a dance in the evening, with which general mention of that recreation I should have left it alone if I had not some reason to suppose that it was quite an original dance, and one of a most uncommon figure. It was formed in an odd way, in this way. Edward, that sailor fellow, a good free dashing sort of fellow he was, had been telling them various marvels concerning parrots and mines and Mexicans and gold dust, when all at once he took it in his head to jump up from his seat and propose a dance. For Bertha's harp was there, and she had such a hand upon it as you seldom hear. Dot, sly little piece of affection when she chose, said her dancing days were over. I think because the carrier was smoking his pipe and she liked sitting by him best. Mrs. Fielding had no choice, of course, but to say her dancing days were over after that, and everybody said the same except May. May was ready. So May and Edward got up, amid great applause, to dance alone, and Bertha plays her liveliest tune. Well, if you don't believe me, if you'll believe me then, they may not have been dancing 5 minutes, when suddenly the carrier flings his pipe away, takes Dot around the waist, dashes out into the room, and starts off with her toe to heel quite wonderfully. Tackleton no sooner sees this than he skims across to Mrs. Fielding, takes her round the waist, and follows suit. Old Dot no sooner sees these than up he is all alive, whisks off Mrs. Dot in the middle of the dance, and is the foremost there. Caleb no sooner sees this than he clutches Tilly Slowboy by both hands and goes off at score. Miss Slowboy, firm in the belief that diving hotly in among the other couples and effecting any number of concussions with them is your only principle of footing it. Hark! How the cricket joins the music with its chirp, 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 and how the kettle hums. But what is this? Even as I listen to them blithely, and turn towards Dot for one last glimpse of a little figure very pleasant to me, she and the rest have vanished into air, and I am left alone. A cricket sings upon the hearth, a broken child's toy lies upon the ground, and nothing else remains. Yeah, Dickens gives us happy endings. He puts people through it though, doesn't he, eh? My goodness, good old Dot. And May didn't marry that old chud. And that old chud turned out to realise he was an old chud and tried to turn his life around. That's good, isn't it? That's what we like. John was about to end up in the evening news. Yeah, I know. This is not quite what you're expecting. Cricket on the Hearth. It's nice though. Um, I think that's the thing. The cricket heals all, but I think we can find the cricket all around us if we choose to see it. Um, Whole different Abbey. Dot was content with her old different Abbey. Old Dilf and Abby. Who's Abby? The cricket was the friends we made along the way. Yeah. Yeah. Cricket was the chuds we ditched along the way. Baby? Babby. Yeah, probably. Her Dilf and Baby. Drink 2 bottles of cheap wine. You can be crickets. You can be crickets in my soup. Soup feels very homey. This evening I will be making a red soup. You take the bottle and you put it in it, and it's a very beautiful soup. Do we still eat the crickets? Good question. Book analysis with drunk sig. Yeah. Shot, skull. He's having a stroke, someone put a wallet in his head. I don't think that's what you're supposed to do when people have strokes, to be fair. I don't know what it is you're supposed to do, but I don't think you're supposed to put a wallet in someone's mouth. And for that matter, if someone's having an epileptic episode, you're not supposed to do that either. I did enjoy reading it, we see. Yes, I read it many, many years ago, and I kept it because I like it. I mean, Christmas Carol is one of my favourite stories, and it's quite iconic. And Oliver Twist, yeah. God, that's hard though, isn't it? Great Expectations. Oh my God, that takes you on so many twists, doesn't it? Oof. Yeah. Yeah, that would be the first thing. Call the ambulance for sure. I don't know if you were there, Mahogany, for the other streams when I said what you need to remember about Dickens is it was serialized. So every chapter, I think, was printed weekly. So don't feel because I mean this is right. This is 230 pages or something, and this is like a third of the size of some of the books if you go with this format from the Penguin Classics. So don't feel intimidated by that. You can take a chapter, put it down, come back to it, pick it up, because he kind of does these little reboots. He'll remind you. And because he was serialized and also because he was paid by the word, that's why he's quite wordy and his descriptions are pretty long. But if you know that and you enjoy it and you just slow down, then it is approachable. And that's what because I like to tear through some books, you know, like you read detective stuff and you just like, I just tear through that like airport novels. Love doing that, just like bang through it. Just slow down, really enjoy the descriptions and go back up the half page and read it again and really kind of get into what he says. Yes, he yaps so much that one gets lost, but he does repeat himself. and I think in the bigger books, the Oliver Twist and such. I'm not sure if most writers did that. I think he was lucky to be picked up by the papers. Yes, I have had that experience where reading so fast. Yeah, you just fly through it. And then, of course, sometimes some writers, you're like, what? You have to go back. Because I had no understanding what he said there. But anyway, so it's been a long time since I read all three. I think it's really cool. I'm glad I could share it with y'all. So Thursday afternoon, time to be determined. I guess we need to work out, Finn or Sally, if you can mod, how that could happen. But it would be late afternoon, early evening, probably. Or not too late. I don't want to, make it reasonable time for people who will be cooking for dinner to eat, and for those who can't cook at that time, at least you can always go back and watch it on YouTube. Yes, I'm still doing tours in Prague. In fact, a few people have already contacted me this year or over Christmas, and I'm very slow at getting back, as some of you know. Thank you, Bublina. Yeah, weekly episodes. It's still weekly episodes. Yeah, but we'll carry on reading. Yeah, I just want to get into the cooking. So we will carry on with Poe. Probably not this week. Or I might read a bit of Poe while the soup's cooking. How does that sound? How do we sign up? For a tour, contact me on Instagram on the Dadzig page. Is the best way. I will have a website up at some point. Onomatopoeia. Well, I can't share the soup food with you, Bublina. Not here. But we did the Mask of the Red Death. Did you miss that, Esther? Yes, you have been told to be persistent, and you must. You just keep prodding me, because I'm like, I'll get back to you. Hang on, you tried to reach out to me on Instagram. When? When did you do that, Wissy? Do that again. Well, try again, because I may have I'm not very good. There's a few things I'm not good at in this life, and that's being on time, although I managed tonight, and being quick on getting the answers back. Don't recommend reading while cooking. I did it once and the kitchen burned down, along with the garage. Well, we might do the Red Mask again. It's a good one, isn't it? 4 days ago, really? Huh. Okay. Well, try again. Yeah. So classic unreliable artist. Unreliable in what sense and for what? About what? Imagine us getting Michael to help us with medieval catering. Yes? Yeah. I'm up for that. I'm going to be finding some of these medieval catering folks and getting amongst that. You burning the house down. We're going to burn this town home. Gonna kill the roof. PJ, gonna burn this goddamn house right down. Unreliable in communication and timeliness. That's not true. No, you can't say that. I know a lot of artists who are very good at that stuff. Sometimes, and puts them in message request folder. Yeah, I did that, and I've deleted a few because it looked like, they're like from 40 people's obvious spam. What book do you want me to read for when I do the reading as Michael for you guys? Laws of Misrule coming soon, I promise. One time I smoked my kitchen out because I danced while cooking popcorn. Yeah, classic popcorn. Ooh, Oh no, Alison, what happened? That's awful. Wet towel, of course. Wet towel, wet towel. Oh, Morning Glory Milking Farm. Great book. If it doesn't exist, someone needs to write it. Nettle stuffing and mushrooms. Well, there'd probably be some kind of venison or something involved, wouldn't there? Um, yeah, no, that's like water on grease. That's uh. I tried to bake a wood pencil covered in plaster in an oven. All right, it does exist. Please look it up. Mm. The pan did not. Oh dear. Watership Down. No, I mean novels can be readable. The problem is that is probably still in copyright. Uh, you can talk about it, really. But I'm not sure. You just can't read it. I think necessarily. But Penguin Classics is the way to go. Um, if there are the correct cooking facilities, that might be possible. Well, of course, you have some vegetarian options. That goes without saying. Um, Completely fine, absolute classic at that age. Yeah, that's the thing. You got to try, right? Um, who hasn't set a pan on fire? It's happened to me, but luckily I put a lid on it. Right. Mm. Uh, the book is controversial. All right. I'm deaf because of the trumpets. What is the book, Rami? Is it Okay, I won't ask. Uh, Nettle stuffing in Olamos. I'm so out of the loop. Yeah, yeah, I know. They're into that up there because they don't have any real vegetables. You've never set anything on fire. Hang on, not even a fire. Like, surely you've set a fire on fire. Some news. Tell us you've made a fire. If you haven't, come to the Czech Republic, or if you're in, we'll do that. No, yeah, I thought it was Sard. Yeah, I had a feeling it's 120 Days of Sodom. I think whatever, controversial. Uh, I've never set anything on fire. Oh, you guys, you really? All right, maybe I'm a pyromaniac. Probably not. It's so much fun setting things on fire. Pyro, hey you. Uh, and Eeyore as well. Okay. No, I wasn't attacking the Olamotian. Yes, of course the nettles are a theme. I realise this plays back into the KCD thing. Nettle mead, shut up. I burnt my hand with a flaming marshmallow once. Oh, that'll do it. Oh, dude, the panic. Uh, with a hot, you burnt a hole in your jeans with a hot glue gun. Did you burn yourself, dude? You do it often in Texas. Say no more. Um, Bublina is just, you're on fire tonight. You're just like cooking it. We're talking about nettles, as in the plant nettles. Nettle tea, nettle soup. What, did your mum find out, Georgia? Keep your Swedish traditions out of this. All right. Oh, dude. Sorry, Alison. Yeah, hot glue guns. Shit. Um. that sounds exciting, Esther. Cool. Oh, dude. Yeah, I burnt my hair as well. Not all of it, obviously, but just like eyebrow, cigarette. Um, yeah, where are you getting nettles from, Esther? I guess they'll be up by then. Or what's where are you getting? Or are you just using dried nettles? Oh, Bublina. Okay, thank you for the qualifier there, Debbie. I'm glad to hear that. Um, oh shit, yeah, super glue. Yeah, man, that stuff gets hot. Have you ever? It never happened to me, but have you ever mixed two part like filler or glue? Um, a guy I used to work for, he's a product designer. He said when he was at university, they were mixing up like massive batches of this two part car body filler stuff, and it if you put if you put more hardener in, it gets harder quicker. But if you put too much in, because it has an exothermic or is it endothermic reaction, the whole thing went. And he was doing it in the back of his a van apparently because he was on his way to university to finish the project, and they were trying to get it done. Anyway, uh, yeah, no, burnt hair is not good. Um, Cool, nice. Yeah, epoxy, exactly. Two part. Oh, yeah, all those little traumas. What would Radzic do if there was a fire at a castle if Istvan was inside? Depends on whose castle it was. Would he risk himself? Maybe. Um, all right. I'm not sure about this goat thing, but I like goats. But I guess it's like some kind of ritual where you burn goats in the New Year's or something. Um, okay. Dandelion and burdock, but that would be made with the root, wouldn't it? Not the leaves. It's a straw goat. That's what she said. Um, all right, gang. I'm going to call it. I'm going to say good night. Um, so people don't burn it down. But is it supposed to be burnt down? Is that the point of it? At the end of it, that it does get burnt down, Alison? Uh, please check Instagram. I will. What's an illegal tradition? What are you doing? What is going on? This is all coming out now. Um, the birds eat it too. What are we talking about? It's not supposed to be burnt, which is why it must be burned. You have a lovely evening, all too, and maybe have some of you tune in on Thursday. Time to be announced, and we'll make Czech soup. Oh, Czechs! Who Czechs? Which soup? Quick democracy. Czechs. Which soup? What traditional Czech soup? Collider not included. Česnečka. Česnečka. Česnečka with cheese. All right, it's 3 for Česnečka. My pleasure to be reading. I like it very much. The Gavla goat. Okay, Česnečka. Yeah, that's what someone was saying. It fell over. Yeah, which soup I should cook on Thursday? Česnečka, I guess. Česnečka. For those of you who don't know what that is, by the way, that is garlic soup. Awesome when you're feeling tired, sick, hungover. Yeah, Axe soup. Really? Okay. Why axe soup? And then we'll have to leave it there. Pocztiva Sekirkova. Oh, right. Okay. Yes, Barbarian. I will do. I will get ingredients up on Instagram by tomorrow evening. Okay. And it will also go up on YouTube, of course, because that's my plan. Stories and cooking, and at some point I'll start playing games as well. Anyway, we'll see. Cool, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Stay happy and stay safe. Stay maybe slightly drunk if that's what you like. And eat good food. Feel happy. And it's great having you guys. What an awesome community. It keeps getting said, but it's true. Hey, girl.